Hello, my name is Will Meadows, and in this mini lecture I want to guide you in the process of understanding how to think like a solutions architect. I recommend this course for anyone who's just beginning their journey into solutions architecture, as it will provide some fundamental ideas that you'll need for the rest of your education and career. So please take a seat, grab a coffee, and let's boil down this complex topic into a few simple thoughts. What is a solutions architect? In general, a solutions architect is a designer. They are someone who has deep knowledge about how systems work, both in isolation and as part of a whole. When talking about AWS Solutions Architects, this means they are very familiar with the AWS services that are required to create multi-tiered internet applications, internet business tools, analytics and big data pipelines, and much, much more. This familiarity doesn't necessarily mean that they will know every odd detail about any particular service, but a good solutions architect should be able to explain how that service operates in a bubble, with other services, and what it can connect with, and what services could replace it by being similar in nature. A solutions architect is also an eternal student. They should be regularly researching and staying up to date on the newest services that have been released. Being able to incorporate new knowledge and not being stuck to existing ideas is paramount for success in solutions architecture and in much in life in general. The overall goals of the solutions architect. In general, our role as designers is to create robust systems that are able to handle unexpected events as gracefully as possible. This means that whenever we create something, it should be able to survive things like system failures, being overloaded with too much traffic, and dealing with the unexpected as best as it can. Additionally, our job is not only to create systems that have these capabilities, but to do so around specific goals. Each project is different and you'll have multiple goals most of the time, but in general you can boil them down to designing for cost, designing for speed/experience, designing for security, designing for fault tolerance, and designing for availability. For example, you might be asked to create a solution, but to focus on making it as cost-effective as possible. Maybe you're working on a budget-constrained project that won't get proper funding until the minimal viable product is ready. Maybe after the minimal viable product is prepared and you've been granted that funding, you would be asked to redesign the solution so that users have the best possible experience. Reductions in load time and ease of sign-in being a priority. After that, it is determined that we need to redesign once more for security as our product is gaining traction and we want to start dealing with compliance-related data. A short time later, maybe, you might be asked to redesign again, but to focus instead on the fault tolerance of that data. Now that we've gone to so much trouble to gain the customers, we don't want their data to be lost in a failure of some sort. And finally, you could be assigned to make the project available for a global market, to make sure that whenever somebody anywhere in the world wants to access their data, they'll be able to see it without timing out or having to wait for a server to respond. Even with just one project, you can see how the scope of need changes over time and what you're designing for shifts as the project matures. It is also important to notice that it's hard to design for all those needs at once, especially when cost is considered high priority. What you'll need to learn to become an associate solutions architect. The well-architected framework. Becoming an AWS Solutions Architect can take a lot of time and dedication, but it is very rewarding having the full understanding of how all the pieces of an architecture fit together. To start off, you'll need to learn the fundamentals of the well-architected framework. This is a guide written by AWS that helps to describe key concepts for designing and running workloads in the cloud. There are 5 pillars that make up the well-architected framework, and each of them will help you to create robust architectures. I'll summarize the ideas quickly here, but if you want a more in-depth lecture, please watch this course. It will go over everything in greater detail. The first pillar is operational excellence. Its goal is to have you focused on running, monitoring, and designing your systems pragmatically. This pillar wants you to create your infrastructure as code, meaning that everything you build, do, and manage can be described through text. This gives us the ability to repeat the things that works well and to roll back changes that do not. We also want to look for ways to improve our infrastructure, our code, whenever possible. When learning about new systems and services, try to think about how we can codify these things, how we can work to continuously improve them, and how we can monitor those changes in the system. The second pillar is security. Its goal is to make you understand your responsibility when building architectures. We need to secure our environments as much as we can because failure to do so can be catastrophic for both your users and your company. This means having robust identification and authorization of any users that have access to data, or have the power to change the underlying architecture. We also need to create ways to trace data access and data movement, as well as provide security both at rest and in transit for our data. The third pillar is reliability. Your designs and architecture should be able to function correctly and consistently throughout its entire lifecycle. This means that we should be testing and understanding how the system recovers from failures, scaling events, and outages. These systems should be automated, as it will reduce downtime and remove human error from the equation as much as possible. The fourth pillar is performance efficiency. You should be constantly looking for new ways to improve your systems. This means staying up to date on new technologies and services released from AWS. You need to be able to determine when a servered solution works better than a serverless solution. You'll need to be able to understand when it's time to switch from one to the other, or when a combined approach might be beneficial. And the final pillar is cost optimization. Most people can build a solution that will technically complete the design specifications of a project. However, they have done so in a not so cost-effective way. Everyone, everywhere, cares about cost. It might not be their number one priority, as explained earlier, but you should not be creating wasteful architectures. You should be able to measure the efficiency of your systems and determine if any changes you make will cost more or less in the long run. Additionally, you should regularly return to old solutions to see if there have been any improvements or new services that can be retrofitted in to improve cost savings. As we go through the process of becoming an AWS Solutions Architect, try and keep in mind these 5 pillars. They are great guides in determining what you should look for in a service, in an architecture, and in the solutions you are building. The AWS services. There are a few groups of services that you'll need to learn about in order to speak fluently about AWS. You'll also need to understand how these services fit together and what paradigms they work well with. The services can be grouped together by function, and I think it's helpful to catalog them in your mind in the following way. Services that can do work on data, services that hold data, services that help to catalog data, services that glue other services together by moving data or notifying when data is ready to be processed, services that provide security for your data, and finally, services that create the network for users to access your data. There are now over 200 fully functional services that AWS offers. The good news is that as a solutions architect, you will in general only need to memorize about 20 very common ones and 40 uncommon ones for your associate level certification. If you decide to really dive deep into AWS and want to work towards a professional certification, you'll need to have a deep knowledge of all the previous 60 and general knowledge of about 30 more. Many of the remaining services will have very niche use cases and are something you can look up and read when they become needed for those specific use cases. In addition to just knowing the services, there are a few design patterns and workflows that are important to understand as a solutions architect. The multi-tiered application, microservices, the serverless model, DevOps workflows, and big data/database analytic workflows. Your goal is to be able to speak about the benefits and trade-offs of each of these, recognize them within existing architectures, and to be able to create new or novel variations of any of these themes. Wrap up. Here's the good news. We are fully prepared to teach you everything you'll need to know to become a certified AWS Solutions Architect. Our learning path covers everything I've just outlined already and much more. Our instructors have deep knowledge of AWS, instructional design, and adult education methodologies. We integrate specific hands-on laboratory experience with the learning path so that you can turn book knowledge into practical experience. You can do this. Every one of the instructors you will hear from have walked in the same shoes you are about to journey forth with. So my advice to you is this: trust in yourself, take the time to learn things the right way, and practice what you learn. And don't be afraid of failure. Making mistakes and correcting them is the best way to learn.